Tim Felger has said he will answer any question posed to him tonight on the Fred Factor. So let's have the first question here from one of our viewers here. Any subject to go about Tim. And the first question, Tim, is if you think crack cocaine should be legalized.
Regulated. And what it is the higher you drive the price of these products, the more violence you put out upon the community. The more property crime, the more street prostitution, and the more enforcement for collecting the debts. So it should definitely be regulated and brought inside to a business and taken out of the streets and, out of the park.
So is that a yes or a no to the legalization?
Probably in the way they would understand it, yes.
Yes.
But regulation is not just a flat-out yes and unfeathered access.
Okay. Next question. Do you think the gas prices are going to reach $4 a gallon in the United States? And I guess that's something like $2 or $1.75 or something a liter here in Canada this summer.
Yes. We're going to continue to experience inflation because this is the way they're paying for the war, is by printing money, and that's what's going to cause all of our inflation. So we're going to see a decrease in employment and an increase in prices.
Do you want to see crystal meth legalized as well?
Not legalized, regulated.
Regulated.
And I think people need to understand what regulation is. It's getting it out of the parks and out of the back alleys, and it's getting it out of the hands of the dealers and into people that are going to give them access to medical care and access to psychiatric care and access to a clean, safe supply.
So legalized then, really?
In terms of people can understand, yes. We won't accept the standard. We won't accept what's going on now.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. We're taking questions right now with Tim Felger. Do you really think that Cheerios, Tim, should be an election issue in Abbotsford?
Cheerios is representative of how petty our city council is and how misdirected. Martin Luther had a saying, and it was, "We've got guided missiles and misguided men." And I think that's really appropriate for Abbotsford. I think some of these people are creating the problems with the enforcement, and they're causing the people to become homeless and so on and so forth. And then they're trying to run on a political platform of get tough on crime. And what they should really do is step back and look at this as a government policy called drug prohibition, as a causation of the increased homelessness and the increased amount of people in the park and stuff. And they should also look at it as these are our brothers and sisters and our sons and our daughters and our moms and our dads that are there. And if they took that approach and approached it with compassion and understanding, I think that what we would do is get some regulation into this thing. And we need to have a sensible discussion. And we need to include all the stakeholders. That includes
Tim, you're babbling.
No, I'm not.
You're babbling a little bit.
We need to include the stakeholders.
Okay. I've got a great question for you. Cheap drugs, free drugs, or expensive drugs, which is the best option?
Cheap.
Cheap drugs is the best option?
Yes.
Why?
Because it decreases the prostitution, the street prostitution, and it decreases the violence and the property crime and the amount of gangs. Gangs are basically drug dealing organization, but they're a business entity.
So, what about the argument then that cheap drugs could then be bought by school children?
That's what regulations are about. It's like once a person becomes addicted, then they can go to their doctor and get a prescription for it. We're not talking about unfeathered access. We're just talking about once you become addicted, you can get into a system where you're not in the black market. Like if you want to create a monster, take a person that's addicted or hungry and, try teasing them and withholding the food or withholding, the drug.
Right. Okay. What about in your plan to kind of regulate and make drugs like meth more available? Well, not unfettered, just unavailable. How would you feel if a member of your family perhaps ended up with a crystal meth addiction because of the easy access? How would you feel about that?
What happened was when I was a kid, girls would go to the doctor and and get black beauties, and truck drivers would go and get uppers and downers. There was a relatively fluid supply of amphetamines on the market, and when the government started to crack down, it was only when the crystal methamphetamine became more popular. Okay, so what we're talking about is that, like, if there's a certain amount of people that are going to be addicted to this stuff, and they're going to like it, and they're going to want it, and they can do it safely for a while and come in and out of their dependency upon it without ruining their life.
Huh. Interesting.
You know?
Interesting thought. Interesting discussion. So then, you would suggest, in your policies, you would be able to. You think you'd be able to help addicts more, even if the drugs are more readily available?
Yes. First of all, they would have access to counseling, and they would have access to safe supplies, like clean socks and, food, and, other necessities of life, like water. I mean, these people don't get enough water. But the second thing, and more importantly, is people have to take in the total spectrum of the drug war, and they have to understand, like, the foreign policy of the United States and how it will pave the path for world peace. And they also have to understand that if we had a rational debate in our government, we would be using hemp as a supplement for the biofuels and for food. And these, if you take in the total spectrum accounting of what we're talking about with drug prohibition, you end up talking about Bill C-51.
Right.
Right?
That's right. Interesting. Well, interesting discussion, Tim. I thank you for calling in and rescuing my show and answering these questions. Anyone, have you ever had a question asked to you that you wouldn't answer?
Not that I wouldn't answer, but that I didn't quite understand what the answer should be at the time. I try and be honest and answer people as best I can, and I try and just let the people vent their hate, frustration with their government and their understanding, and just move the debate constantly more towards the center. The only thing I'm asking is let me speak. Let me get up on stage and let me speak. And I don't want somebody to speak for me. I don't want a lawyer to speak for me. I don't want some ex-police officer or something like that, some ex-judge. I want to speak and let me debate the issues with the people and bring an understanding. And like I can talk about religion, I can talk about economics. I can talk about finance. I can talk about business. I can talk about this on many different levels. And that's why it's important, is because I actually got solutions. And I would encourage people like Sid Gould and Jim Beckeridge to
fans of yours,
the information and not take a position that's political or adversary to mine, but one that supports an open debate.
Now, I've got a really interesting question for you here by one of the young members of the Fred Factor audience. Do you think that the USA, or even Canada for that matter, should they be forced to, the residents there, should they be forced to learn a second language?
I think people will automatically learn a bunch of Spanish and stuff because it would be in their best interest. And I wish I had learned more languages when I was young because it would give me a deeper understanding of who the people are and their thought processes and stuff like that. So I don't think the word forced is a good word, but I would encourage people to be always more than they are.
Right. 30-second answer, Tim. Are we closer to Armageddon today than we were yesterday?
Yes. I fear that the United States has slipped into a very bad police state and the police state matrix, and that the economy is bad. The global warming problems are getting worse. And I think that, like with the food shortages and the plagues and the pestilence, we need to really get involved in our government and take control of it before it kills us.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yes, I think we're closer.